The Treaty of Hearts. Aliens didn't believe in love until humans showed them asterisk. The Xyrathi Dominion had never lost a war. Their fleets stretched across 3 arms of the galaxy, their logic-driven society cold and efficient. To them, emotions were vestigial remnants of primitive biology. When they discovered humanity, they expected another loud, short-lived species. Fragile bodies, inefficient governance, sentimental nonsense. But then came the Battle of Ceres. A human patrol ship, hopelessly outnumbered, had rammed itself into a Xyrathi destroyer to save a colony convoy. A mathematically absurd move. No profit, no chance of survival. Pure waste. The Dominion demanded answers, so, in the shimmering halls of the Crystal Council, Ambassador Mara Ortiz of Earth stood alone before the Xyrathi Chancellor. She was small compared to the towering insectoid forms around her, but her dark eyes held steady. "Explain to us," hissed the Chancellor, his mandibles clicking. "Why do your kind throw lives away for others? Why die without gain?" Mara inhaled slowly. She thought of her brother. She thought of his final message, recorded seconds before fire consumed his station. "Because," she said softly, "humans have something you don't. We call it love." The word fractured through their translators, coming out jagged and strange. The council chamber fell into silence. One alien delegate leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Define this." "Love." And so the story began. Asterisk the tension. The days on Xyrath Prime stretched into weeks. The Crystal Council chambers echoed with endless negotiations, yet no progress was made. The Xyrathi demanded submission. Mara Ortiz offered cooperation. Neither side bent, but in the long corridors between sessions, in the gardens of crystalline trees and glowing rivers, a new conversation began. The alien curiosity one delegate lingered after every session. Younger than the others, his bioluminescent markings pulsing faintly when he watched her. At first, he questioned her with clinical detachment. "Why does your kind choose a single mate when genetic efficiency suggests variety?" Mara had smiled softly. "Because love isn't about efficiency. It's about meaning. 2 people choose to share a life, not because it makes sense, but because it makes life worth living." Veilthor tilted his head, recording every word. Yet his eyes betrayed something more than curiosity. Stories of humanity each night. Veilthor sought her out again. He asked of human rituals, marriage, lullabies, funerals. Mara told him of her late husband, lost to a mining accident on Europa, and how she still wore his wedding ring even now. The alien stared at the small band of metal, a symbol of one who is gone. "But he offers you no protection, no alliance, no offspring." "He offers me memory," she whispered, "and that is enough." For the first time, Veilthor did not respond with logic. He simply sat in silence beside her, listening to the echo of her heartbeat. Division in the council word spread among the Xyrathi that the human ambassador spoke of love. Some dismissed it as weakness. Others feared it. One elder declared, "This is their weapon, this love. It drives them to madness. They fight wars, not for gain, but for ideals. That makes them dangerous." Another argued, "Or it makes them strong. We cannot break what has no logic." The council split. Tension mounted, the first intimate gesture on the 3rd week. Veilthor brought her to the grand chamber of stars, where the ceiling opened to the cosmos. He held out a shard of glowing crystal, jagged but beautiful, We crafted this without purpose. It is inefficient, wasted energy, but it is beautiful. Is this what you mean by love? Mara reached out, her fingers brushing his hand. Her warmth startled him. His markings flared bright blue. It's the beginning of it, she whispered. The sparking that fragile moment, they both knew something had shifted. This was no longer just diplomacy. It was something forbidden, dangerous, and utterly human. But in the shadows, other Zyrathi watched. And not all were pleased. Asterisk, the crisis breakdown at the summit the council chamber thundered with clashing voices. The humans are too dangerous. They fight without logic. Their irrationality infects even our own youth. They must yield or be destroyed. The Chancellor slammed his staff against the crystalline floor. The Dominion does not bend to chaos. Earth will submit. Ambassador Mara Ortiz rose small against the towering alien figures, but her voice carried. No, humanity will never kneel. We do not fight because of logic. We fight because we love what we protect. The words struck the chamber like thunder. For some, it was blasphemy. For others, a spark of curiosity. For a few, a dangerous temptation, Valtharest defiance, when the Chancellor declared that war was inevitable. Valtharest stepped forward, bioluminescent markings blazing like fire. Enough. I have heard the human. I have felt her truth. This love is not weakness, it is strength. Gasps rippled through the chamber. A junior delegate defying the Chancellor. Treason. Armed guards stormed forward. Mara instinctively moved between them and Vale. If you strike him, you strike me. Her words echoed. The guards froze, uncertain. The Kubat, not all hesitated. A faction within the council, militant, fearful, seized the moment. Blasters hummed to life. A coup had begun. The chamber exploded into chaos. Crystal walls shattered, delegates fled. Mara was shoved to the ground. The crackle of energy weapons scorching the air around her. Vaelfer grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a fallen column. Why do you shield me? You risk your life for me. Her breath was ragged, her heart pounding, because that's what love is. It's risking everything, not because it makes sense, but because the other person matters more than yourself. Vaelfer stared at her, stunned. Something inside him shifted, a truth he could not unsee. Choosing humanity, the coup leaders cornered them, weapons aimed. The human dies. Her poison dies with her. Vaelfer moved without thought. He stepped in front of Mara, spreading his arms wide. No, you will not harm her. Not while I live. For the first time in Dominion history, a Zyrathi placed love above duty. The guards hesitated. Confusion spread. Some lowered their weapons. Others fled. The coup collapsed under its own fracture. Aftermath smoke filled the chamber. Shattered crystal reflected the light of distant stars. Mara touched Vaelfer's arm gently. You didn't have to do that. His voice was quiet, almost trembling. But I wanted to. For you. And in that single moment, the gulf between species closed. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The breaking point, 3 weeks into the summit. The patience of both sides cracked. The Zyrathi Chancellor's mandibles clacked in rage as he slammed his staff. Enough of these stories. Enough of this. Human nonsense. You speak of love as if it were a weapon. You insult logic with superstition. If Earth cannot submit, then Earth must burn. A roar of approval echoed from the militant delegates. The human observers in the gallery gasped, hands flying to their mouths. Mara Ortiz did not flinch. She stepped forward, voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. You misunderstand. Love is not a weapon. It is why we fight even when we should not win. It is why we survive when others would surrender. It is why we would rather die than betray those we care for. That is why you cannot break us. The word love rolled through the chamber like thunder. Half the council jeered. The other half murmured uneasily, unsettled by something they could not quantify. Veilthor's breaking of rank, then Veilthor spoke. His bioluminescence flared bright blue, defiant. Chancellor, you are wrong. The human speaks truth. I have studied her. I have listened. This love it is not weakness. It is strength. The chamber froze. An audible gasp swept through the delegates. A junior diplomat defying the Supreme Council. Treason, the Chancellor's eyes narrowed. You dare side with the irrational, with this fragile creature. Veilthor turned, his gaze falling on Mara. His voice was quiet, but it carried. She is not fragile, she is human, and that is more dangerous than any fleet. The coup ignites the militant faction had been waiting. In seconds, blasters hummed. Soldiers stormed the chamber. The Chancellor himself was shoved aside as the faction leader roared. The Dominion does not need diplomacy. It needs conquest. End this charade. Kill the human, and the infection of love dies with her. The chamber erupted. Delegates scattered. Guards clashed. Energy fire seared the crystalline walls. Mara was shoved hard, crashing against the dais. Her vision swam, but through the chaos she saw the soldiers raise weapons at her, the shield before she could react. Veilthor leaped in front of her. His arms spread wide, glowing markings blazing like fire across his body. No, if you strike her, you strike me. The soldiers hesitated. No one had ever seen a Xyrithi shield another with their own body, not for politics, not for family, not for anything. It was illogical. Mara pushed herself up, standing shoulder to shoulder with him, despite the danger. You don't understand. Love isn't a disease. It's the only reason we endure. That's why my brother ran into fire. That's why my husband died saving his crew. And that's why I stand here beside him now. She laid her hand on Veilthor's arm. He flinched at the warmth and steadied, drawing strength from it. Fracture within the Dominion, the chamber boiled with confusion. Some soldiers lowered their weapons, stunned. Others shouted treason. The militant leader screamed, "He is infected. Destroy them both." But cracks had formed. Delegates whispered. Guards faltered. For every soldier who aimed at Mara, another hesitated then, in a single moment that would be remembered in Dominion history. One guard dropped his weapon to the floor. The sound rang like a bell. Another followed. Then another. The coup unraveled. The aftermath of fire smoke choked the chamber. Shards of shattered crystal glittered across the floor. Mara coughed, her hand still clutching Veilthor's arm. You didn't have to protect me," she said softly, voice breaking. Veilthor turned to her. His alien features were unreadable, but his markings glowed faintly, like the heartbeat of a star. "No," he said, "but I wanted to." For the first time in the history of the Xyrithi Dominion, a leader chose love over logic. Silence. After the storm, the Crystal Council chamber lay in ruins. Shards of broken architecture glittered across the floor like fallen stars. Smoke curled upward, and the scorched scent of energy weapons hung heavy in the air. For the first time in generations, the mighty Xyrithi Dominion was quiet. The Chancellor, shaken and weary, looked upon the chaos his people had created. His eyes fell upon Mara, Ortiz, and Veiltha, still standing side by side, her hand resting on his arm. Not as enemies, not as diplomats, but as something else. Explain this. Madness, the Chancellor rasped, voice trembling. Why would you risk your lives for one another? Mara straightened, her voice clear despite exhaustion. Because life without love isn't life at all. Humanity has survived because we care for more than ourselves. We fight for our families, our friends, our homes, and yes, sometimes even for strangers. That is what makes us human. A new word for an old empire, the chamber whispered. The alien delegates, once unmoved, now murmured to one another. The word spread among them, love. Some spoke it with confusion, others with reverence, but none could deny the power they had witnessed. Power that defied logic, yet stopped a coup, yet moved one of their own to defy death. Veiltha stepped forward, his markings pulsing softly. He knelt not in submission, but in choice before both the Council and Mara. I choose humanity. I choose love. The Council gasped. To choose outside logic was heresy. Yet, in the wreckage of the coup, the word resonated. A seed had been planted that could not be uprooted. The treaty signed in the days that followed, negotiations resumed. But this time they were different. The Dominion, fractured and unsettled, agreed to peace, not because of strategy, not because of profit, but because something strange and unquantifiable had shaken them to their core. The documents bore the title, the Treaty of Hearts. It was not named by the Dominion. It was not named by Earth. It was whispered into being by the youngest delegates, who spoke of a new concept they had learned from humanity, a concept their language could not define, so they borrowed the human word unchanged, love. A private farewell on the night before Mara's return to Earth. Veiltha found her beneath the starlit canopy of the Grand Chamber. Your people will remember this as a victory, he said quietly, but for me it was something more. Mara smiled sadly. She touched his hand, their fingers brushing lightly. For me too, perhaps in another life, Veiltha. He looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, reverently, he placed his clawed hand over hers, a gesture of bonding in his culture. But this time, it was not born of logic. It was born of choice. Their eyes locked. No kiss passed between them, the gulf of species still too wide, but in that silence, in that closeness, they both felt it, something irrational. Something dangerous. Something worth everything. Epilogue generations later, Zyrathi children whispered the word love in their nursery songs. Alien poets wrote of it. Warriors spoke of it before battle. Diplomats invoked it across the stars. The Dominion had mastered war. It had mastered science. But only humanity had taught them the most powerful force in the universe. Love, years later. The halls of the Crystal Council had been rebuilt. Where once only cold symmetry had stood, now carvings and murals adorned the walls. Strange, irrational, beautiful things. Among them was one mural, unlike any other, a depiction of two figures, a human woman and a Zyrathi delegate, standing side by side, hands almost touching. Beneath them, a single human word was etched in glowing crystal. Love. The ripples through the Dominion, the older Zyrathi, still struggled to speak the word. Their mandibles clicked uneasily, their translators hissed with static when they tried, but the young whispered it freely. They carved it into their learning halls. They sang it in hymns beneath the stars. They used it as explanation for choices no logic could justify. A warrior who refused to abandon a comrade. A scientist who spent decades on a cure for a disease that claimed only a handful of lives. A parent who worked long into the dim cycles, not for efficiency, but for a child's smile. All of these were once meaningless in Xyrathi culture. Now, they called it by its human name. Earth's perspective on Earth, the story of Ambassador Mara Ortiz, became legend. Schools taught her words alongside treaties and star charts. Children reenacted the moment she stood unarmed before alien weapons. She had not merely signed a treaty, she had changed the course of civilizations. Her final reports filled not with strategies or resources, but with stories of sacrifice, loyalty, and devotion, became required reading at the Academy of Diplomacy. And when new ambassadors departed Earth for distant stars, they carried a single lesson at heart. Never underestimate the power of the irrational. Valther's choice Valther never rose to become Chancellor. Many distrusted him for his defiance, others worshipped him for his bravery. He spent his life as an emissary, bridging gaps where numbers failed, where equations faltered. And though he and Mara never met again, he kept one thing close until his dying day, the crystal shard he had once crafted without purpose, the shard Mara had called the beginning of love. When his body was laid to rest, the crystal pulsed faintly with his final bioluminescent glow. The final eco-centuries later, when historians debated the rise of peace among the stars, they did not cite fleets or armies. They did not cite treaties of metal or blood. They cited a single summit where one fragile human spoke of something greater than logic, and they all agreed. The Dominion had mastered war. The Dominion had mastered science, but only humans had taught the galaxy the one truth that endured across all species. Love is stronger than conquest.